springing to mind at the moment? All right. Well, the drug war springs to mind. There's been a lot of things going on with these no-knock raids that are happening. There's in fact there's a great YouTube music video about it that just illustrates how disgusting it is that that these SWAT teams, which are militarized police, are barging into people's homes, terrorizing their children, shooting their animals, all in the name of protecting us from drugs. And very often the drug that's the culprit is marijuana, a drug that anyone who's bothered to do the least bit of research would know that is much safer than alcohol, nicotine, even safer than caffeine.
Fair enough. You're going to have the other side of that, though, in part, and I can speak a little bit from experience because, I'm a paramedic, so I've seen people on drugs, and some of these drugs can do really bizarre, screwed up things to people, and they act bad. And in some cases, they will injure or even kill other people or die themselves from the drugs, and that's a strong reason that a lot of people like the war on drugs, because they see what these drugs do to people. And arguably, they are bad for people. It's not like a lot of these drugs are good. Marijuana is relatively harmless. It still gets you high, but it's relatively harmless in comparison to a lot of other things. But they see, the violence that results from, gangs and drugs and all that, and they see the the problems that people have with the drugs themselves, and so they continue to support the drug war.
Yep, and that's where you have to make the case that first of all, the violence is caused by the drug war. If it wasn't for the war on drugs, there wouldn't be this violence. And we're very fortunate today to have an excellent example, which is Portugal, where they decriminalize drugs. Ultimately, drug usage goes down because people who are addicted to drugs don't feel a social stigma. They're willing to go out and get help. And that's what people who are addicted to drugs need. They need medical help, not jail time.
Do you think it's a possible interim solution that maybe the solution is not immediately to legalize drugs, but to decriminalize them, but possibly force the people who can't control their addiction and end up hurting other people, force them into treatment, at least for the short term, because the fact is, they are hurting other people and they are on these drugs. And in some cases, those drugs are arguably a cause of their violence.
Well, ultimately, I wouldn't support any program that forces anyone to do anything. Right. I think compared to what we have now, that's definitely a step in the right direction. So as a very pragmatic individual myself, I would definitely support transitioning to that. And I think once people saw the results of that, they'd be very open to, well, we don't need these laws at all. This can all be done voluntarily.
Well, hopefully that would be correct. But there are a lot of people who, in the same way with the schools, the problems with the drugs are real problems that real people have, and people see their friends or their family members destroyed by their use and or abuse of a lot of these illicit drugs. So, and as a libertarian, obviously I think that all the drugs should be legalized entirely, but that's not an argument you can make to the general public at this time.
And, well, the argument you make is that they're going to be able to get help when it's legalized, because right now, if you're addicted to cocaine, you don't want to go up, to someone and say, hey, look, I'm addicted to this dangerous drug that happens to be illegal. Can you help me out? No one wants to do that. They're terrified of not only the social stigma, but the potential criminal consequences of that. When it's not criminal to do these drugs anymore, people will be willing to get help, and that's the case you need to make to people, that, they're going to be in a better position to get help. Those people whose lives were destroyed would have been in a better position to get help if it were decriminalized to begin with, or if it were legalized to begin with.
One of the interesting things about the drug war is right now that even at the same time that people are trying to push for legalization of at least medical marijuana, if not outright legalization of marijuana. I'll stop for a second while that goes by. But another issue is that some of these same people are pushing for banning cigarette smoking. And so it's not exactly always a principled stance that these people are taking. So how do you convince the folks?
Sorry about that. Where were you? How do you convince the folks to...
Well, how do you convince the folks who, for example, are pushing for the legalization of marijuana at the same time pushing for the criminalization of cigarette smoking, that their stance, is is, you know, it's apparent to us, obviously, that it's an unprincipled stance as far as liberty goes. But, I mean, as you said yourself, you know, cigarette smoking is more harmful than marijuana smoking. So they argue, well, let's legalize marijuana smoking and let's criminalize cigarette smoking. So,
well, to convince these people, that's probably an uphill battle, and quite frankly, I don't think you need to convince everyone. I mean, I know the hope is that, you know, we have a win-win solution for everyone here, but the reality is there's going to be some people on the margins of any topic who won't be convinced, who have an extreme stance, they're unwavering about it, and they won't be convinced. We just have to hope that the vast majority, and I think the vast majority will, when they actually analyze the facts for themselves, will be won over by our argument that the best solution for our society is complete legalization of these, and to help the people who become addicted through charity, whether it's, you know, just you helping out a family member or charity organizations that are going to help people who find themselves in these positions.
Well, hopefully people will accept those arguments because they're logical to me, and I mean it works, but it's a matter of convincing everybody else that they're the right arguments to go with.
Yep.
So.
And, you know, that's why, like anything else, you want to be transitional. You don't want to take the extreme position that, okay, everything should be decriminalized tomorrow or everything should be legalized tomorrow. You can win them over much better with an argument of, you know, let's do this because this is rational, this is logical, let's allow marijuana patients to have marijuana. That's a perfectly reasonable thing to do, because these people are using this as a legitimate drug to treat symptoms that they have. And you can continue to edge them forward rather than trying to do it overnight. A lot of libertarians, when they get into debates, they run the libertarian hardline position, they're unwavering about it, and they never convince anyone of anything. If you take a position that you're willing to make some compromises to move in the right direction, then you can actually accomplish things.
I heard recently about a law or a suggestion for making it requiring a supermajority to pass a law and a simple majority to repeal a law or to remove it. What do you think about that?
It's an interesting concept. It kind of runs in some ways contrary to the idea of democracy. Not that democracy and liberty are synonymous in any way, because they're not, but
it would reduce the number of laws is the idea.
Well, that's true, although some would argue that a lot of the existing laws are not good and they need to be changed now, and if you require a supermajority to change things, then you're not going to get something to change.
No, simple majority to end a law.
Well, you mean to just repeal laws off the books?
Right.
To delete code out of the official...
Well, you know, there should certainly be much more of a move to repeal bad laws, because we have so much on the books, and people talk about, you know, all the new laws they want to get passed, but there's so much bad stuff on the books, and there should be a focus on getting rid of that. And, you know, I like the recent proposal that unfortunately the court struck down, that you need a supermajority to pass a tax increase. I think there should be more things that would require a supermajority, but at the same time, you know, we need to be more vigilant about just enforcing the Constitution to begin with.
Yeah. Well, on a local and or state level, I mean, one of the options that you might have instead of necessarily supermajority would be the idea that there's an automatic sunset provision that all laws say sunset after 10 years, and they either need to be renewed or they're gone. I mean, this could create problems in some instances because, you know, like, you know, there are a vast majority of people who obviously want laws against murder and rape and things like that. But on other things, issues that are more controversial yet still pass, it'd have to be renewed in 10 years. So that might be an alternative proposition,
right,
instead of a supermajority.
Any other ideas that you'd like to discuss, or you're tired of this?
Not that I can think of right now.
Yeah, I think that'll do.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
You're welcome.